I want to say thank you very much, and I hope we can take on for Africa. As you know, I don't have to re-emphasize the importance of diaspora, but you know, African Union, Commission, and the whole or the entire African continent really put a lot of value to the diaspora relation. And you've seen many countries in Africa now, if they don't have a ministry, they have a bureau, or they have a department for diaspora affairs. In many countries in Africa now, they are also changing their rules in terms of immigration rules, in terms of investment rules, to accommodate diaspora, because they realize diaspora are an integral part and parcel of African development. So for Africa, diaspora is a family to us. And in that respect, my office, my mission in Washington, we have many to do to deal with diaspora affairs. We have worked so hard to deal with the diaspora in different areas, but I believe a lot has to be done to be able to really come together as a family. Now let me briefly say the status of what we've done so far in the mission and relation to promote relation between the diaspora and African through African Union Commission. The mission, we established the mission in 2006, but we had submitted a letter of credence to the government in 2007. But within that short period, we had opportunity to go out of Washington to meet the diasporian in their areas. So we had a mission in Detroit. We had a very good meeting. We had met Diaspora Association in Detroit, and they gave us their points of what we should do to be able to encourage and to be able to promote diaspora relations in Detroit. We also managed to go to Houston. We have been to Seattle. We have been to Milwaukee. And for the remaining of the year, we plan also to be able to finalize the mission in New York and Chicago, and also to some extent to Canada, just to meet our family in those respective areas. But due to shortage of funds, we could not be able to finalize this other portion, but I hope we may be able to do at least in New York and Chicago. Now, what are the issues that confront our diasporian? And this is for the purpose of my director to know what is on the ground. One of the issues that when I travel all in those areas, this is in terms of how can the diaspora participate or work with the commission, or how can the diaspora institution can really interact with the countries in Africa. Now, for instance, when we talk about how the diaspora wants to work with the commission, I have received a lot of requests for some of the members wants to be observer, to have observer status. And sometimes it's discussed, sometimes we are being advised to encourage the diaspora to look for opportunity for the ECOSOC, to be members of the ECOSOC. And of course, I believe my director would also give us opportunity to know what is the status of ECOSOC, because we had preliminary election in the Western, especially US. But now there are questions asking how to proceed with the election and how to be able to have representatives to be able to participate in the ECOSOC, because we know ECOSOC is going on as planned. So I think during your deliberation, I'm trying to say this before you speak in front of my director, that those are the pending issues that the diaspora organization are talking about, whether you go to Atlanta, to the California or Detroit. Those are the issues that are currently being discussed. We had a problem of locating trying to match the diaspora with their professions. As you know, His Excellency, our chairperson, talked about the brain drain situation. We would like to change the brain drain to brain gain in Africa. But we need to know who are we are all address ourselves to be able to create one Africa, to create one united Africa. And when you talk about united Africa, you need Africa which is economically viable, which is very developed, that has a necessary infrastructure, that has capable, skilled manpower to be able to run our economic programs. So those are the things that we need to build constituency, to be able to put pressure on the administration through dialogue. African Union is ready and is committed, as you're going to hear from my director. All the institutions, the African Union, they are ready. Our African government, they are also ready. They recognize that diaspora are an important part of our family. And they can deliver, they can help to work with African people to be able to bring the agenda ahead. Again, even the administration, we have seen institutions who are willing now to talk about diaspora, to promote diaspora. We have a program with the World Bank, we have a program with EU, we have a program with France, we have a program with USAID. All these, they are ready to push the diaspora agenda. So as I said, we should not miss this momentum. Let's work together. Let's work as a team. Let's try to create a force, the diaspora force in the America, to be able to really push this agenda forward. I want to thank you and
we have said a lot about the diaspora initiative of the African Union. Why? What is it intended to achieve? How did it come about? And I think it's important in our dialogue with diaspora community, so that if you are, it's true, we want to, it's our family, we want to, for what purpose? And why is it under the aegis of the African Union? It's something that we need to consider. Now, the diaspora agenda of the African Union, at its roots, is the transformational agenda of the regional organization. It's transformation from the Organization of African Unity into the African Union. Now, the Organization of African Unity was a state-centered organization. And it was state-centered for two reasons. I've had a lot of people say, oh, the OAU did not achieve anything, it was a bad organization. It's not true, historically. The OAU was designed to do one thing, to complete the process of decolonization and independence. That was its sole objective. And if you really look at the record, it did it. Between 1963 and 70s, slightly by the 80s, the process was completed. But the focus was on states, not because it was purely a state-centered organization, but because at the point in time in which the OAU was being formed, there was no sharp distinction between state and society. If you look at somebody like Nkrumah, he came from prison to achieve something. The leaders of the independence movement were leaders of civil society. It was them and us. And at the period of independence, we had this rainbow coalition where we thought that they incarnated both state and civil society. There was an unusual intersection of state and civil society in the historical developing African states in 1963. But it didn't last long. And we thought at that time, with our romantic and utopian appeal, that it will continue like this. These are leaders of society, they represented the society, they will continue to live with society. But when we are doing it, even symbolically things were changing. It's like one person said, in my country, for example, state houses, either the state or the federal capital, they were on top of a hill. When the Europeans came, they built their state houses where the governor or something on top of the hill, where they presumably were communicating with our ancestors. They were too busy for us. Now, essentially, when our leaders got to those positions, they went on top of those hills. So invariably, there was a disconnection with itself. Every so we had them say one party state, they became saviors, and we had military dictatorships coming in. So the state and society were disconnected. But in the continental organization, because they were the leaders, they were able to maintain the artificial distinction. They said, I represent my society. After all, I won an election. But we know the elections were getting something. So there was a disconnection between state and society. But it was not problematic because they, as well as the society, were committed to this independence agenda. But once you have our assumption also was based on what Nkrumah said, seek ye first the colloquial kingdom and all of that things she will be added onto it. It was a reasonable assumption at the time we made it, but they were not added onto it. We saw streets, we saw poverty, we saw corruption, we saw endemic cracking of infrastructures. So essentially, and it wasn't just our fault, because I think we were being prepared in the direction. There was a level in which the Cold War also kept a lead on this thing. They selected these leaders, reinforced them, so they were able to withstand stresses and shocks coming from society. So there was an endemic dislocation of most African states.
Yes.
But once the Cold War was ended, they had no interest in it. African states had to find their level. So you have people like the man in Zaire and others facing the public. And at that time, it was when the move towards the transformation of the African Union started. And then we realized that it must focus on development.